Everyone, it's a bit of good news finally, okay? It looks like there's been some level of normalization in housing prices, and in this video, what I want to specifically talk about is what's been happening, what is some of this new bits of information, and when can we expect to see more normalization in housing prices and an end to this housing bubble that we're in. But before I get too far into it, don't forget to smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm, as well as subscribe to the channel, as of course it'll greatly help me out in terms of developing the content for a lot of these videos, and of course, thank you in advance. Anyway, let's get into it. So unless you've been living under a rock, there's been a significant price increase in housing prices over the last, 12 to 15 months, at least since the commencement of this whole global health crisis, okay? So the prices have been up almost 24%. There's been a variety of different reasons in terms of why this has basically happened. I've covered off on a lot of these reasons in other videos, so definitely go ahead and check it out. I'll include a link for it up above as well as in the description below. But in terms of a quick recap, in terms of what's been driving a lot of these prices, they have included the quest for more space during the global health crisis. So as people have had the ability to basically work from anywhere, they've been looking for more space. They've left their cities and have moved to the suburbs, which has created incremental demand. There's been low mortgage rates due to some of the Fed policies, and this has of course made acquiring a home more compelling than renting a home. Limited supply of new homes due to high material prices and labor shortages. You'll hear about lumber prices in the media a whole lot. Lumber prices absolutely went through the roof during the global health crisis, and over the last couple of months have started normalizing, though with that said, they've all been extremely high even to date. Then there's greater employer flexibility. I've talked about this briefly earlier, but employers have provided their employees with more opportunity to basically work from anywhere. And of course, there's the rise in the cash-driven offers from all of these investment firms and financial institutions that has basically been also driving up housing prices, as these investment firms have basically got this thirst for yield. And when you have a 24% increase in any given asset class, it's of course going to bring a lot of these investment firms into the journey as well, okay? So these are a lot of the factors, probably not all of them, but a lot of the factors that have basically been driving up housing prices quite significantly over the last 12 to 18 months. So now that we've got that out of the way, right, the question becomes is what's actually changing, okay? So let's look at some of the data that has recently come out according to some articles from CNBC, okay? So sales of newly built homes dropped in June to the lowest level since early days of the health crisis. Sales of new single-family homes fell to an annualized rate of 676,000, 6.6% below May's rate of 724,000, and 19.4% below the June 2020 level of 839,000, okay? And these sales is actually below even the levels from when the global health crisis actually started, okay? So we're actually seeing some level of deterioration in terms of sales activity when it comes to a lot of these homes. The median price for newly built homes in June, however, did rise by 6% from June of 2020, and while this is large gain historically, it is nothing compared to the 15 to 20% annual gains seen in prior months, okay? So we're starting to see some level of stabilization. Prices are continuing to increase, but there is some level of stabilization or deterioration in terms of the rapid pace with which these prices have been going up. The inventory of new homes for sale jumped from a 5.5 month supply in May to a 6.3 month supply in June. Last fall, it was as low as just 3.5 months, okay? So this is basically an indicator that houses are basically staying on the market for a lot longer. So when you have buyers basically pulling out and effectively willing to wait, then you have more inventory sitting out in the market. When you have more inventory sitting out in the market, there's probably going to be this desire to potentially lower some of these prices such that these sellers can effectively get out of those homes. And of course, as I've talked about earlier, raw materials, particularly lumber prices, have started to deteriorate quite significantly. While there is still a long way to run when it comes to these lumber prices, we can expect to see quite a bit of heavy deterioration in the not too distant future here. While more can absolutely be done, okay, more can absolutely be done to basically reduce a lot of these material costs, and of course housing starts need to continue to increase primarily in that low end. This is basically a lot of signs from a data perspective that the tides are rapidly starting to turn. Prices are slowly but surely getting very, very uncomfortable for the potential new home buyer, okay? And now with mortgage rates slowly but surely starting to trickle up, and we can expect some more level of trickling up to occur in just a couple of months here, particularly when the Fed effectively goes to Jackson Hole and makes some announcements subsequent to that. The level of cushion with which a home buyer may potentially have when they had low interest rates is starting to deteriorate as well, okay? So these are all good signs, unless you're of course a seller for a new home, that prices are going to start stabilizing fairly soon. And I'll talk about what I think in terms of the duration with which that will manifest itself in just a second here. So as I've said, right, people are starting to bow out, right? There's a significant amount of frustration that is also transpiring because of all of these bidding wars that are basically taking place, okay? There's this very unfortunate article of this couple that basically toured over 17 homes, made 14 offers, generally all above ask, and not a single one was accepted, okay? And this is going to create a significant amount of emotional burden. And as it relates to this particular couple, they of course pulled out and are effectively going to wait for some time until they continue with their home buying journey, okay? There are other factors as well, okay? And one of the biggest factors that is out there is the end of government support, okay? Dun dun dun. So this is kind of like happening in a lot of different areas, but the government basically instituted a lot of different programs to enable people to keep their homes during the global health crisis. But now a lot of those programs are going to start ending fairly soon here, okay? So for example, the foreclosure moratorium, which prevents foreclosures of federally backed mortgages, comes to an end on July 31st. Similarly, on September 30th, the mortgage forbearance program, which allows some borrowers to pause their payments, will basically lapse as well, okay? So now you've got these changes that are basically happening, okay? There's a lot of factors that are coming up here in just a couple of months, which will generally speaking trickle or result in a significant increase in the number of homes that will potentially be entering the market. So like always, let's look at the data again here, okay? Since the start of the health issue or the health crisis, over 7 million homeowners were enrolled in the forbearance program, okay? And now the economy has of course improved quite significantly over the last couple of months here, and now the number of homeowners that are basically in this home mortgage forbearance program is more around 1.75 million, okay? So this is about just 3% of US mortgages, but still a very substantial amount when you think about the amount of supply that may potentially enter the market, okay? But like everything, there's always two wild cards. The first one I've already talked about, okay, is the amount or the number of these households that are in this mortgage forbearance program, this 1.75 million or so, that'll actually put up their homes for sale. Pretty intuitive there. And the second thing that we also need to be cautious about is, will the government potentially extend or increase the term of this forbearance program? Now at this stage, there's basically no indication that a lot of this stuff is going to happen, okay? So when can we expect to see an end to this bubble, right? Probably the whole multi-million-dollar question here. For whatever predictions are actually worth, I think we're probably a good 6 months out, probably a good 6 to 9 months out at most, okay? And there's a couple of reasons in terms of why I would say that that is the case, and here's a few of them. So firstly, you have to wait till September, right? That's when this mortgage forbearance program basically comes to an end. There'll probably be a month or two there, after which these households are basically going to have some line of sight in terms of what is it that they're actually going to do. They're going to negotiate with the lenders. They're going to do all this other stuff in terms of figuring out what that next step is going to be, okay? So you're already out until probably October or November with that said. The other thing that I've talked about in this video is, of course, these material prices such as lumber and copper and so on and so forth, okay? These things have definitely come down in price, but they do need to come down significantly more such that builders can basically build homes on the low end of the market, okay? The issue isn't on the high end of the market, the $700,000, $900,000, $1 million homes. There's of course plenty of those that are out there because they're obviously more profitable for builders to basically make, but we need builders to basically make these homes on the low end of the market, okay? And that obviously takes time, and builders are only going to do so after these material costs actually come down quite precipitously. The next factor that we usually have is the winter months, okay? So in the winter months, particularly in the northern states, but for generally speaking the country as a whole, there's a significant amount of decline as it relates to new buyers that are out there as well, okay? The summer months is when this thing gets absolutely hot, is because kids are out of school. There's all this other stuff that's basically transpiring, expiring, but in the winter months, prices basically, or not prices, at least the demand for homes definitely starts to deteriorate, which will allow the supply chains to basically start catching up with all of this incremental demand, and of course for home builders to get these houses out on the market. Now there is one factor out there which could result in some of this timeline potentially increasing or improving. When I say increase, I mean actually a reduction in the 6 to 9 month time period, and that is mortgage rates. Okay, so there's a key meeting that is coming up in Jackson Hole where the Fed basically gets together in August, and they will come out with some potential policy changes as it relates to what is it that they want to do with interest rates, what is it that they want to do with all this cash that's getting pumped into the markets. Should they potentially, start their tapering process? What is going to be a timeline around that? And what that may potentially result in is a rise or increase in interest rates. When you have that rise or increase in interest rates, it could potentially result in less cushion for a buyer, right, who's already overextended themselves, and more of them may start chilling out and basically saying we're not going to be entering or looking for a home. Okay, so what are your thoughts around all of this? Do you think that we may experience this normalization in home prices in the next 3 to 6 months, or 6 to 9 months, or greater than 9 months? Include all of that in the comments below, and I hope you enjoyed the contents of this video. Definitely like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.